In this video, you're going to learn how to create dashboards in Google Data Studio, including how to add charts and tables, and how you can begin customizing your dashboard. I'll also cover the benefits of using Google Data Studio, and I'll walk you through how to visualize and present data from Google Analytics, including Google Analytics 4 or GA4 and Universal Analytics. Okay, let's get started. We will jump into Google Data Studio in just a moment, but before we do, I just wanted to highlight some of the key benefits of using Google Data Studio, especially compared to the reports in Google Analytics. First, the reports and dashboards you create can be dynamic. For example, you can add different types of controls like drop-down lists to filter and update your dashboard. Google Data Studio is really flexible. You can create single-page dashboards designed to be presented on a TV screen, right through to multi-page reports. There are lots of visualization options. These include timelines, maps, area charts, pivot tables, and more. You have the option of adding multiple data sources. For example, if you wanted to create a dashboard that includes data from Google Analytics, Google Search Console, and Facebook in a single view, then this can be achieved with Google Data Studio. And another key benefit is customization. This includes the way you design your reports and dashboards through to combining data to create new metrics and more. Okay, now let's look at the dashboards we're going to create. Let's head to Google Data Studio. First, we're going to create this audience dashboard, and I'll walk through the steps to create this dashboard. We can see top-level metrics at the top of the dashboard. We can see the total number of users, the number of page views, then the number of conversions and the conversion rate. We can also see two engagement metrics, which are the bounce rate and the average number of sessions per user. We can also see a small sparkline for each metric, so we can see any trends that are occurring. Then moving down, we can see a larger graph showing the trend for the number of users and conversions. And below this, we can see details about the different devices people are using, and a map showing the geographic location of our audience. This dashboard uses data from Universal Analytics, but we'll also look at how we can convert this to use data from Google Analytics 4 or GA4. And I've included conversions and conversion rate, but you could easily change this to transactions, revenue, or other e-commerce metrics. So this is the first Google Data Studio dashboard we will be creating. The second dashboard we are going to create is this one. This acquisition dashboard provides a top-level view of your website. This dashboard includes key details about how people are finding your website. We can see top-level metrics for how people are finding the website. On the left, we can see the total number of sessions coming from our paid campaigns, from organic, this includes search and social, and referrals. To the right, we can see the top 5 acquisition channels. This provides a visual comparison of our top channels. And we can see the number of sessions for each channel, along with the number of conversions. Scrolling down, we can see an area chart showing our top 5 channels, but this time we can see the trends occurring within the date range, so we might see unexpected spikes and dips from particular marketing channels. And at the bottom of the report, we can see a table that shows us the marketing campaigns that we have tracked into Google Analytics. This will include your paid search campaigns and any inbound marketing that uses campaign tagged URLs. For each campaign, we can see the medium, so we can quickly see where a campaign is coming from. For example, we can see people coming from an affiliate campaign, from our cost per click ads, so Google Ads, and from our email campaigns. And we can see there are a number of metrics for each campaign, including the number of new users, conversions, and revenue. This dashboard uses data from a Google Analytics 4 or GA4 property, but you can create a very similar dashboard using data from Universal Analytics. Okay, let's take a look at the Google Data Studio interface and start creating these reports. We're on the home page. Across the top, we can see there are some templates we can use and customize. So if you're looking for ideas, they provide some good starting points. Below the templates, you'll see any reports you've created. The reports you've opened most recently are at the top. You can filter the reports included in the list using the options on the left. so we can view reports that other people have shared with us, reports we've created, and any reports that have been deleted. And you can also search for particular reports you've created using the search option at the top. Above the templates, you'll see we're currently looking at reports, but we can also select data sources and Explorer. We'll talk more about data sources in just a moment. Basically, we can connect different platforms to Google Data Studio to create our reports and dashboards. So we might connect a particular property from Google Analytics to create our report, and we might connect a spreadsheet from Google Sheets. These would both be data sources we'd use for our reports. Now let's click Create and select Report to start building our first dashboard. Our first step is to select the data source we want to use for the report. We can see there are lots of different platforms we can connect. These include Google Analytics, which we'll be using in a moment, along with Google Ads, Google Sheets, and other Google platforms. And then there is a whole range of other third-party connectors we can use too. I also want to highlight that you can access sample data that Google makes available by selecting the My Data Sources tab at the top. You'll see any data sources you've already used, and then if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see sample data that Google provides. You can use the sample data if you're getting started and want to explore the different types of reports you can create. Now we could select the Google Analytics sample data, but instead I'm going to show you the steps to connect Google Analytics. So let's select the Connect to Data tab at the top. And now let's select Google Analytics. You'll now see a list of Google Analytics accounts you have access to on the left. And you can select your account, and then the property you want to use for the report. You will see Google Analytics 4 properties start with GA4, and Universal Analytics properties start with UA. I'm going to select a property. And since I'm going to use a Universal Analytics property for this dashboard, I also need to select a reporting view. If you're going to use a Google Analytics 4 property for your dashboard, then just select the property you want to use and you can continue to follow the steps we're about to cover. And if you want to learn more about Google Analytics 4 or GA4, then I've included links in the description below this video. Then we need to click Add. And then we click Add to Report. Now we can begin to create our report. We're going to start by creating the Audience Overview dashboard. We can see the report is landscape, but I want to change this to portrait for my one-page dashboard. To do this, we need to select the Layout tab on the right. If you don't see this tab, then just make sure you don't have anything selected on your reporting canvas. For example, if you have a chart selected, then just click outside of the chart, and you'll see the theme and layout options on the right. Let's select the Layout tab, and we're going to change the canvas size from US Letter Landscape to US Letter Portrait. Feel free to choose a different canvas size and orientation depending on how you want to view your report or dashboard. We can see that a table has automatically been added, so let's select this. I'm then going to right-click and select Delete. You can also simply click Delete on the keyboard. Now we need to start adding the elements to our dashboard, so let's select Add a Chart. And we can see there are a range of visualization options, including bar charts, pie charts, area charts, and more. You'll also find these options by selecting Insert at the top. Let's start by adding a scorecard. This includes the metric in our report, and we can choose where we want to place it on the canvas. We can now drag it and resize it. We can see it automatically shows us a default metric of new users from Google Analytics. We're going to change this, so we need to ensure we have the chart selected. And then we can see the Data tab on the right. We can see the default metric for the chart. So let's select this and change it to Users. Now we want to include a comparison with the scorecard. This will let us see the trend for the metric on our dashboard. So let's choose a date range for the comparison. Let's select None, and then choose Previous Year. You could also select Previous Period, which will compare the current date range to the same number of days prior. Now let's click Apply. We can now see the trend for the scorecard, so we can see if the metric is increasing or decreasing. Now let's select the Style tab, and we're looking for Comparison Metric. And let's deselect the option that says Hide Comparison Label. This means we can clearly see that the comparison is from the previous year. I also want to include a sparkline to see the trend for the metric, so now let's add a sparkline to our dashboard. Let's resize it. Now let's select the default metric and change this to Users. And I'm going to show this using a smoothed line, so let's select Style, and under General, let's select Smooth. The style of the final report has a white box with a drop shadow behind the metric, so let's add a rectangle to our report. I'm going to change the background color, add rounded corners, and add a shadow. Now we can either right-click on the shape and choose Order, or we can select Arrange from the top of the interface and then choose Order and then Send to Back. And I can make some tweaks so the dashboard is styled correctly. When I'm happy, I can select all of the elements and then right-click and choose Group. You can also select all the elements and choose Group under Arrange at the top. Let's copy this so we have 6 scorecards at the top of our report. Now we need to change the metric used for each of the scorecards. To do this, we click the group, and then we click the element in the group we want to change. Now let's change the metric, so let's change users to goal completions. And we can change the metric for the sparkline. Now we can repeat this for page views. Then goal conversion rate, then bounce rate. And number of sessions per user. Okay, next we need to add the time series to our dashboard. So let's add a smoothed time series chart. And let's change the dimension to date. And let's add a second metric to the chart. Let's add goal completions. Now let's adjust the style for the chart. Let's select the Style tab. And then scroll down to Background and Border. And let's make the background color white, add a corner radius, and a shadow. The next element we're going to add to the dashboard is a bar chart showing the different devices people use to view the website. So let's add a horizontal bar chart. Let's change the dimension to device category. And the metric to users. Now let's select the Style tab and enable the option to show data labels and compact numbers. Scrolling down, let's look for legend. And let's select the option on the left that removes the legend from the chart. Now let's add a table to our report. And let's add two metrics. Let's add goal completions and goal conversion rate. Now let's select the Style tab. And let's look for Table Body and deselect Row Numbers. And let's deselect Show Pagination. And let's add a rectangle to style our report. And adjust the style. Now let's add a title for this element on our dashboard. Finally, we're going to add the geographic map to our dashboard. Let's add a geochart. And let's change the metric to users. Let's select the Style tab and deselect Show Legend. And now let's add another rectangle. And add a title. Now I'm going to add a rectangle to the top of the dashboard. I'm going to add a heading Finally, let's add a date range selector so we can control the date range used for the dashboard. To do this, let's select Add a Control. And then let's choose Date Range Control. I can then adjust the style of the selector. And I can make some tweaks so the dashboard is styled correctly. So that's how we can create the audience dashboard using data from Universal Analytics. Now I want to show you the same dashboard using data from a Google Analytics 4 property. Let's take a look. Let's open the dashboard. It's almost identical, but goal completions and goal conversion rate have been replaced with conversions and conversion rate because GA4 properties don't have goals. Instead, they use conversions. And bounce rate has been replaced with engagement rate, which is a bit like the opposite of bounce rate from Universal Analytics. If you'd like to learn more about engagement rate and configuring conversions in GA4, then you can find links to my extra resources in the description below this video. Okay, now it's time to create our second dashboard. We're going to create the acquisition dashboard using data from Google Analytics 4. We're going to use similar steps to create this dashboard, but we're also going to apply some filters to our charts to only include certain sections of our traffic. Okay, let's head back to Google Data Studio. Let's go to the home page. And let's create a new report. Let's choose Google Analytics as our data source, and choose our account and property. Now let's click Add, and add the data source to our report. We're going to adjust the canvas size like we did in the first dashboard, so let's select the Layout tab and change the canvas size to US Letter Portrait. Let's remove the table. And let's add a scorecard. I'm going to follow the same steps we used for the first dashboard, so I'm going to change the metric to sessions. I'm going to add a comparison. And I'm going to select the Style tab and deselect Hide Comparison Label. Next, I'm going to add a rectangle to style the report. Adjust the style and move it behind the chart. And group the elements. Now I'm going to copy this element. Okay, now we want one scorecard for our paid sessions, another for organic, and the final scorecard for referrals. To do this, we're going to apply filters to each of the scorecards. Let's select the first scorecard. Since we only want this scorecard to include paid sessions, we need to add a filter to the scorecard. Let's select Add a Filter in the Data tab. We can now create a filter to only include the sessions we want to use for the scorecard. So let's name the filter Paid Sessions. We need to ensure Include is selected. Then for the field, we're going to search for and select Session Default Channel Grouping. Then Contains. And enter Paid with a capital P since filters are case sensitive. And click Save. The chart now shows us the number of paid sessions for the date range. Now we can also see the title of the chart hasn't updated to reflect the filter we applied, so let's rename the metric. To do this, we find the metric in the Data tab, and then hover over the icon to the left of the metric so that it shows the Edit icon. Let's click this. We can now rename the metric. Let's name it Paid Sessions. That's it. We can now apply filters to the other scorecards. Let's select the next scorecard. And let's add a filter. Let's name the filter Organic Sessions. Then select Include, then Session Default Channel Grouping, then Contains, and enter organic with a capital O, and click Save. This scorecard now shows us all of our organic sessions. Let's rename the metric like we did for the other scorecard. And let's apply a filter to the final scorecard. Let's name it Referral Sessions. Select Include, then Session Medium, then Contains, and enter Referral all lowercase, and click Save. And let's rename the metric. That's it, we've now created filters so that each scorecard only includes certain sections of our traffic. Now let's add a horizontal bar chart to our dashboard. And let's select Session Default Channel Grouping as the dimension. And then Sessions and Conversions as the metrics. Now let's select the Style tab and limit the number of bars to 5. Select the options to show data labels and use compact numbers. This chart now clearly shows us how people are finding our website and if they're converting. Now let's add a rectangle. Adjust the style, and move it to the back. And let's add a title for the element on the dashboard. Now let's add a chart so we can see any trends during the date range for our top acquisition channels. Let's add an area chart. Let's ensure the breakdown dimension is Session Default Channel Grouping. And let's change the metric to Sessions. Now let's select the Style tab and limit the number of series included in the chart to 5. And let's scroll to the bottom and adjust the style of the background and borders for the chart. Finally, let's add a table to our dashboard to show the top campaigns that are sending traffic to our website. Let's add a table. Let's change the dimension to campaign. And let's add a second dimension of medium. This makes it easier to understand where the campaign was seen. Now let's adjust the metrics. Let's include sessions and new users, conversions, and total revenue. Now the chart includes all of our traffic sources, so let's add a filter so that it only includes our tagged campaigns and our campaigns from Google Ads. Let's select Add a Filter. Let's name it Campaign Traffic Only, and let's select Exclude. Then we search for and select Campaign, and then choose Regular Expression Match, and enter \, open parenthesis, full stop, asterisk, \, close parenthesis. This filter will exclude any values for the campaign dimension that start and end with a parenthesis. Now we can save our filter. and the table only includes the campaigns we want for our dashboard. We can now make some adjustments to the chart. And let's select the Style tab and adjust the background and borders for the chart. Now I'm going to add a rectangle to the top of the dashboard. I'm going to add a heading. And let's add a date range selector so we can control the date range used for the dashboard. To do this, let's select Add a Control. And then let's choose Date Range Control. I can then adjust the style of the selector. Now I can make some tweaks so the dashboard is styled correctly. If you'd like a copy of this dashboard or any of the other dashboards we've covered, you can find links in the description below this video. I recommend taking some time to explore the different visualization options you can use with your reports and dashboards. And to learn even more about Google Data Studio, take a moment to check out the extra resources in the description below this video. What dashboards and reports are you going to create with Google Data Studio? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, then please like it so I know to make more videos like this. See you next time.